measuring yourself against others can be discouraging. Like studying successful writers is good, I think. It can be inspiring because, writing is about progress. But in the end, you also kind of see them as competition. Like on some level, when you see the books in Rising Stars, for example, like, why isn't my book like top 1 Rising Stars right now? And then you keep going back to your own story and you start doubting yourself, right? The best comparisons with your past self. If you want to compare, then compare with what you did in the past and then focus on your growth.
This is the Crit RPG Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Lit RPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Crit RPG Podcast, the only podcast who invites people who are going to Japan with them on complete accident, and we're going to meet in Tokyo in about next weekend. So this time next weekend we're going to see each other in Tokyo, which was not planned at all, but hi, Mike Wee. How are you doing?
Hi. Well, I'm busy preparing for my trip to Japan, and also making sure I finish all of my deadlines before I actually go. There might be a slight chance that I have to work at the airport, like right before I leave, to finish like the final 2 scripts. Because I was like, the art team was basically asking me to deliver the scripts for April and May, so it was a lot of writing in a very short time frame. We'll manage.
That makes sense. Sure. Okay, so tell me what you're preparing for the trip, because I feel woefully underprepared. As far as I know, you don't need like a visa or anything. So
about the visa.
Oh no.
So I'm in Belgium right now, and last time when I went to this is South Korea, I've been like, let's say it's pretty similar, right? They have this treaty with Belgium, I think Germany too, where you don't need a visa. You can just, you arrive in the airport and then you fill out this form where it's just like your personal information, your phone number, how long you will be staying, which hotel you will be staying. And then you give it to the security guy or woman, and then they'll let you in unless you've done very bad stuff in the past and they trace you back. But it should be pretty straightforward.
Okay, pretty good. Because the funny part is, I don't even know if I can say this. No, it's probably like I probably can't. But I'm not going to be staying in Japan, even though I'm in Japan. It's going to be very, very funny. But yeah, cool. Thank you for alleviating my fears there, because I had this nibbling at the back of my head, going, oh no, what if they need like one of those like when you go into the US.
Oh man.
Like the ESTA. Yeah.
That was like a solid week of preparations to just like fill out all the forms.
Yeah.
Oh my.
How much does a left shoe weigh? And why is it not brown? And like you need to like answer all these questions. It's so weird.
Yeah, especially at like a Dragon Con, right?
Yeah.
When you get to like the border control agent, they're like, and what are you doing in Atlanta right now? And I was like, I'm going to a convention. And the guy was like, is it the convention where everybody dresses up weird? And I'm like, yeah. So why aren't you dressed?
Why aren't you dressed? Yeah. But that's like, you can say, well, I'm here to look at the people who dress weird. That's my role. Yeah. And hang out with authors at the West End bar for a long time. Yeah. Man, it was fun. So that's how we like met in person for the first time. And I think this is like now like a rule that we have, that we, like, you live in Belgium, I live in Germany. It's not that far. I think it's like a 6-hour train ride maybe to get a place. Yeah. But we decide to like only meet when you have to fly for at least 8 hours.
Yeah, the only time I've been like in a professional capacity in Germany was like once in 2023 in Frankfurt. Yeah, it's like the only time. Even though it's like the biggest book fair in Europe, I've only been once.
Even in the world.
In the world, yeah.
Yeah. I think Dimi talked about it. So Dimi is another publisher. He publishes German RPG.
Zweihänder, right?
Zweihänder, yes.
Zweihänder.
Yeah. and he was in Frankfurt too, and he said it was a huge disappointment because he had to like make lots of like appointments with everyone, and he didn't do that before. And I went last year. It was nice. Just spent some time there. Met with people from Podium. Met with some people from Dark Horse actually, and some German publishers. But I can talk about that later. You looked like you want to say something.
Oh yeah, about Podium. Chelsea told me that she was there. She was like, "Oh, you went as well." I was like, "Well, a year before that, missed out this one."
Yeah. Chelsea was fun. Yeah, and meeting Kate was also fun. But if you're interested into hearing my thoughts about the whole Podium thing, you need to listen to the last episode. I'm not going to repeat it again. But that was the one with Hannibal, I think. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. Okay. No, like Frankfurt in general it wasn't a waste of time because I really enjoyed being there, enjoyed like networking and all that stuff. But it was very strange because you would go there and you would talk to these pubs, and I would be shopping around like the Wandering Inn and Mother of Learning, like books that aren't that small.
Yeah.
Right. And they'd never heard of them. Okay.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, makes sense. And then, you pull out the numbers and you're like, hey, look, these are the numbers. Look at this. And they're like, well, yeah, well, how many words is it? And I tell them the word count. They're like, no, thank you. Because translating those things takes so much money.
You're giving me like flashbacks to when I was like, I was the ones who actually, I was one of the ones who actually, planned the meetings with the Frankfurt app.
Mm-hmm.
So I had like a ton of meetings. I had a meeting every half an hour or something. Was just constantly busy from like opening hours till closing hours. And every time I would like talk about progression fantasy, like the RPG, they would just look at me like, wait, what is that? And like even my own story, right? At that point, I think the comic was already it was already on Webtoon Original. So I was like, hey, big company, Webtoon. Webtoon is literally in Frankfurt at that point, right? They had like their own booth. And I was like, well, it's on Webtoon, like it's a Webtoon Original. They're like, okay. Next one.
I like it. I like that they're woefully oblivious. Because, first off, Drew and I were the only lit RPG agents. But it's a good thing that that you still don't need an agent for this space, right? Mm-hmm. It's good that you can get published and read without having to have an agent. And I would very much like to keep it that way because, I don't believe that there's any value in just me talking to, there is value, to be honest. Like if you can't negotiate, sure, I'll gladly do it for you.
Yeah.
But sometimes people like really get like pulled over the table because they just don't know what they want or what they even could need. But if you know what you're doing, if you like are active in all the Discord communities, then you can for sure just go and talk to Podium, go talk to Rhett, go talk to Moonquill, go talk to anyone, and you're gonna get a good deal, right? There's not that many bad contracts out there anymore. But yeah, like my value proposition is more like, hey, how can I save you time if you're like really, really big already? Mm-hmm. And how can I, take your stuff and make a movie out of it, or an animation, or a comic, or whatever?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's about time because in our space, self-publishing is pretty big, and most authors will only really go to publishing if they want to focus on writing more instead of growing the IP, marketing the IP, because that takes away time from writing, especially if you need to write like 2K words a day, like some of these people are doing or more. So it makes sense in like that way.
Yeah, and that's the value prop, right? The value is right there where you don't have to market your book. And as opposed to like TradPub, most of the time they actually do a really good job at promoting your book. There's only a couple of times where both Drew and I were like, why didn't this book hit? This is like a really, really good book, like a really good book. Why is no one even looking at this? So whatever. Cool. Hey, why don't you tell me Or why don't you sell me on either Legendary Retirement or Lord of Goblins?
Okay, so I'll try to sell you on Legendary Retirement first, because it's my latest one. It's still fresh in my mind. So Legendary Retirement poses the question of what happens to legends after they complete their quests, right? Maybe to compare it to like with RPG, what happens after you like have the max level, max skills? Usually the story goes on because it's with RPG. But in my case, they kind of retire. There's this like hidden village, think Wakanda, basically. It's shrouded from the outside world. And the story starts when the barrier that protects the village shatters. And then all sorts of people come in. You've got like holy knights coming in, you've got bandits coming in, you've got like businessmen coming in, like cutthroat businessmen coming in trying to make a buck. Funnily enough, that the town is actually called Boomtown. And if you know anything about boomtowns, they're the place where you get the oil and stuff. But yeah, that's like the premise of the story. And into the second book so far, it's only gotten wackier. Like it's kind of a comedy, like satirical take on fantasy. Lots of characters. I mean, like the main character is more so a vehicle to introduce other characters in the story. It doesn't linger on too long. I kind of have a thing for like multi POV stories. It's my second time I'm doing that specifically, even though everyone is like telling me not to do it. It's hard. But yeah, that's like the premise. And then for Lord of Goblins, which is more known, I mean, the name itself is pretty self-explanatory. It's he's going to be supposed to be the Lord of Goblins, hopefully in a few volumes. But the short, like the TLDR version of it is, guy gets reincarnated as like the lowest caste of the Goblin system. He works his way up, or rather he claws his way up to the top.
Nice.
But yeah, if you want to know more about it, go and read it on Webtoon. You have no excuse anymore. It's a comic.
It starts with a really cool assassination scene.
It's actually the only scene that had a lot of work put into it in the trailer, if you've seen it. It was like all the budget in those 5 seconds, like those 10 frames.
God, yeah, like animation is so expensive. Okay, but yeah, can you tell me how you started? I mean, I know how you started Legendary Retirement, but how did you start out with Lord of Goblins?
It was a while ago, like October 2019. So a lot of big authors now were also still starting out back then. I was really into monster reincarnation stories. This was like back in my Weep era, I guess. I think the third season of Overlord just dropped like the year before it, and I was hooked on that. I was watching, I was reading a lot of them on web novel actually. Before I went to Railroad, I did like some stories on web novel, a lot of our platforms. We know what they're up to. So
SMH my head.
Yeah, I was in the unknown spaces of writing, I guess. But I moved to Railroad quickly after a friend recommended it. It was a good move in hindsight. And then I was just working with authors because I had like a passion for creative work, basically. I was doing some internships at like a couple of game companies, mainly for Android games, because I was preparing to go to CS, like in uni/college. So it made sense. And then I was also reading on Railroad. I was like, hey, I can learn how to do better graphic design by helping authors do their covers. And when I was doing that, I was also like, the feeling, the itching of continue to write, because I was already writing a web novel before that. But you know how it goes, you write like 10 keywords and you drop it, then rinse and repeat it. Then I met Hadi, or Darpster, as he's known on Discord, and we really synced. Like we had the same wavelength. We decided to just write something for fun. Well, I wanted to write something about goblins. I don't know why specifically anymore. I think it was just like in the moment. And then we just wrote it up until I think March 2020. we had like 70K words written, which isn't a lot, right? Like nowadays it's 140K to even like submit it to say Aton or like other publishers. But back then we were more so trying to make it like a light novel, you know, like those are usually only 50K, like the shortest ones are 50K words. And ours was long enough. So we were like looking for a publisher in the light novel space, which was really hard to find. And well, then we stumbled on Moonquill. I submitted it, I prayed, and they accepted it. And from there on, I just wrote like 2 other books in the same year, I think, or like, I just wrote a lot. But I wasn't really involved with Royal Road anymore because I was really moving on to the Amazon scene. Because you have to remember, and I forgot to mention this, but the novel didn't do well on Royal Road. Like we had 234 followers. That's nothing amazing for Royal Road. Even back then when there were like less people on Royal Road. So now the Amazon success story really took me by surprise, and also all my attention diverted to Amazon. And I only really returned back to Royal Road when I was doing the Legendary Retirement, like Rising Stars run, which is funny because back when I like went on Royal Road, it was still called Trending. So I was like, what is this Rising Stars shit
Nonsense,
doing here? But that was fun, like engaging with the community again, checking on what changed, being active in writing Discord servers again for like first time in 2 years, networking, all of that. But it's fun, yeah. It learned me again that Royal Road is still a good place to grow, like get the initial momentum before you go to Amazon. It's always worth it, I think. And also, it's a good way to like, well, you basically have free dev editors going through it for free, right?
Yeah.
They may not be,
hits.
yeah, if it hits, but they may not be like official editors, but they'll still take out like major issues of the story, or like they'll slap you on the wrist for various smaller problems.
Yeah, like your math not adding up, and you're like, oh no. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, cool. All right. That's I would say a pretty standard story. No, actually, it's not. You co-wrote this book, right?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that process, because very few people do that.
So before that, I was mainly solo writing like most people do, but it wasn't in my senior year of high school. So I still had like a lot of time to just write whatever. I come home, I just write until like 12 and then go to bed. But I was getting into college, and I didn't know what to expect about computer science. I heard it was supposed to be difficult, so I was like, okay, maybe let's take it back a little, focus on career potential here. So the only real way in my head that I could write a book and also focus on my studies was to co-author it. So Hadi had like a similar story, but his story delves more into family. He had a lot of like family chores to do. He had to take care of his parents. So it worked for both of us to just co-write it. I've heard from like a lot of people that they would never do that because they would eventually hate the person they're co-writing with because of clashes, in creative clashes. But we never had that really. Again, like it's the same wavelength thing. That's pretty rare, I think, because when I hear from other people, it's always a mess. Not always, but like most of the time. But I think our system was something like we try to aim for like 50-50 because we're getting like 50-50 royalty split here. So I would write a chapter and then Hadi would come in, continue where I left off. And we would like do that for each book. I think we swapped around the system a tiny bit when I had like exams. So he would like take writing for a month, and he would take a vacation for a month, and it was my time to like repay the favor. But it worked. I'm glad it did, because otherwise it wouldn't have been there at all.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. The only other author duo that I know who co-writes was, or is, I should rather say, the authors of, I got the picture in my head, By Mort.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that one.
Yeah. And they do it completely differently. So I think well, not completely differently, but I think it's one of them writes does the outline, like they plan together, and one focuses more on like grammar and like line editing, and the other one's more on the plotting. And I think that kind of also works.
Yeah, that's like the classic system I've heard, and I'm also going to try that with my next co-write. I'm still trying to figure out. But yeah, again with like the time constraints, it makes more sense that one person takes care of like the outline and the creative process, and then the other one actually digs in and starts writing it out. And then I think for me, I would still like to go back in as like the co-author, even if I outlined it, to just edit it, maybe like spice it up certain sections, expand certain sections, you know. But that makes a lot more sense because then, you know, one person is the control of one aspect and the other can do the other one without much interference.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, if the outline is good, you can discuss issues relatively easily. But yeah, I like that when the split is 50-50. I know some authors have been trying to, you know, kind of like attach their name to like other people's, like they write the plot and then the other person, like, you know, grows it out. I think that can also work if both people are happy with that system. Like I personally know for a fact that I would never write someone else's story, I don't think, unless I'm like very, very good friends with them. Because yeah, no, I'm not making money by writing, so I'm doing sort of fun, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I also think I would probably ruin everyone's plot very, very quickly by going like on a really weird tangent.
Yeah, I guess it depends on who you're co-writing with. Because if you're like a new author on Railroad and all you care about is writing, but you also don't want to go with like a publisher, so like the step in between is somebody who is a known writer and has self-published successfully before. You can kind of, yeah, like you said, use their name to put yourself on the map, right? For example, I think Malice did like a few co-writes. Craze is doing them, I think. But yeah, those are like pretty big names in our space, and I can imagine being like a smaller author, and then them feeding, because essentially that's what they're doing, right? They're like feeding you marketable outlines. They're like, hey, I know the market, just write this, it will sell. Well, it usually happens from what I've seen. So
yeah, I think that might be my thing where I just don't want to write to market, right? So I want to write like stuff that I would like to read, and that often is not within the market. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And I want to try to succeed despite the odds. I kind of just want to see if I can do it. I think that's my primary drive of doing this, and it's not necessarily making money. So I think that's reasonable.
I totally understand, because I struggle as well with like trying to go against the grain. The thing is that with Lord of Goblins, I did like no marketing research at all. I was, you know, again, just writing for fun. But in hindsight, it made a lot of sense because it was like in a period that monster reincarnation was really popular. Like I wrote this when Melis was writing Salvos, like when the first chapters of Salvos were on Railroad, and like a lot of other monster MC stories were popping up. So like in hindsight, it made sense that I was writing that because I was writing something that I would, you know, read myself, but also something that was marketable in the same moment. Plus COVID, you know, everyone was at home and reading or watching stuff
or playing
games, so it made it a lot easier too. But I think that combination is like the best possible scenario, that you're like writing something that you would read and something that is marketable, or like is people want to buy it basically. But it's hard, you know, it's hard to mix and match those two.
It's yeah, very much so. Because like even if you kind of write to market, you still need to be a good outliner. And I strongly believe that if your story is just a well-written story with a good beginning, then it's going to hit no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's like super on to brand or not. Also staying power. I mean, look at K novels. That guy has like a 3.5 star rating and just like keeps pushing. Right. So I think that I think that's reasonable. But
yeah, I think like with K novels, he's targeting like the biggest or one of the biggest slices of readership on Railroad. And at that point, even if it's not like the best novel out there, people usually want more of the same, right? Like I'm constantly using data mining tools for Amazon nowadays because that's my job. I have to market the books, and I tend to see the same keywords pop up every time. It's like with RPG, weak to strong MC, usually male MC, like hair, and then it's also usually a mix of the class. Like is he like a soul weaver or something? Is he a hunter? And then you also tend to see, those keywords pop up next to the RPG, and it's usually the same, or like a slight variation. Like instead of like a healer, it's an apocalypse healer, because apocalypse RPG is popular, but they want something just that's just new enough to keep reading the next volume, and that works. It still works. It's a good strategy. You have to actually write it right. If you I assume K novels likes the story he's writing, otherwise he would have burned out way earlier.
He's also a machine. He just writes every day. He just like goes to the gym and then writes. What's one thing, or what's like the best advice you've ever gotten as a writer?
So it's already advice I've gotten, but it's something that I've like realized along the way.
That's a third question.
Okay. I guess it's still advice. Like it's still solid advice. I would say that you can't really compare yourself to others too much in your writing journey, right? Every writer's path is different, especially on Railroad, because it's like pretty volatile. So success is pretty subjective, I'd say. Measuring yourself against others can be discouraging. I think I've been there myself. So like studying successful writers is good. I think it can be inspiring because writing is about progress. But in the end, you also kind of see them as competition. Like on some level, when you see the books in Rising Stars, for example, you're like, why isn't my book like top 1 Rising Stars right now? And then you keep going back to your own story, and you start doubting yourself, right? And then the process repeats itself. And again, like going back to stuff like K novels writes. Like maybe you're an author that has a really unique, strong story that just doesn't suit the Railroad audience, and you can't figure that out because you're seeing everything with pink glasses, right? Your story is good. You assume there are readers that read a variety of genres on Railroad, and then you keep wondering why your story isn't doing well enough.
This might be one of my weaknesses. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's really that, and it's. I mean, the best comparisons with your past self, right? If you want to compare, then compare with what you did in the past, and then focus on your growth. Improve yourself, set like personal milestones. It's also something that I've rediscovered again, because it's like I keep forgetting it, to not compare myself. It's really hard not to do. But I was reading this really short book called The Dip by Seth Godin. Not Seth Ring, Seth Godin. The dip is like so you have to imagine it like a graph, right? You start writing on Railroad, you post your first chapter, and there's like a lot of excitement at the start of your writing career. Eventually progress slows down, right? To a point where you have to actively push yourself through whatever dip you're going through, or you quit. Now it's a very American book, I'd say, because it basically says, hey, you have to be the best at what you do in order to go past the dip and skyrocket into popularity. But there's also some truth about it, because there are compounding effects after the dip, like when you get through the hard part of writing, I guess, if I have to make comparison to writing. I think that comparing yourself is often a symptom of being in the dip. And you need to look past that, basically, and move forward. I mean, you may have heard this from like various authors in some way too. But that's basically it.
I mean, we talk a lot about setting your own goals. So if you let someone else set the goalposts for you, they are always going to move them whenever you're close to reaching it, because they don't care, and they will have forgotten, right? And also, when you reach that goalpost and they're like, "Oh, you did great," it's never going to feel amazing, because like they can say whatever they want, like it's never going to feel great, because you're only going to find that feeling inside of yourself, and you can only do that if you set your own goals. It's a whole thing.
It's also it's funny because you forget that other people are comparing themselves with you, right? Yeah. When I had like the Webtoon launch, they would like go back and look at my Royal Road story, and they were like, why this book? It didn't even have 300 followers, right? Like, why this book, not me? And seeing that happen also made me realize that I should stop doing it, because it's not healthy. But one thing that is healthy for marketing is comparing yourself to other successful Amazon launches and then changing some stuff like keywords and SEO terms. That's the only good way.
That's learning, though. That's different. That's learning. That's not going true. Like, why didn't my book do better? But it's like, why did this book do well, and how can I learn from that? That's different.
Yeah, it's the how. It's like you don't have to keep asking yourself why your book didn't do well. To how can I make it do better? I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you move forward on your own, basically. You have this tendency to end on a very good point, and I'm still like reeling, trying to like find my own thoughts. And so this is very, very hard. No, I'm kidding. I'm also a bit tired today. So yeah, these podcasts happen, and I feel that's okay. I'm not Joe Rogan, which I'm very happy for, because I still have hair, which is nice.
You're fine, man. You're fine.
I know. Actually, maybe I should try go like and just see if you say something more after that. Comparison is the enemy. Comparison is just for the ego, and the ego is the enemy of the self.
It's like one quick point going forward with what I was talking about. What I tend to see, like the authors that show up at our door, like at Moonpool's door or any other publisher's door, are usually the ones that go through the dip, right? And they come out the other end successfully, usually. Maybe not on Royal Road, like in follower counts or view counts, but when you add everything up, they are getting to the point where they're successful. Like, I mean, Podium, Tantor, they throw it with advances and stuff, for example. So the authors may not have great numbers on Royal Road, but at the end of the day, they're considered a success because of those advances and those deals. But they wrote their story. They went through the whole process. They went through 1,000 pages of content.
And again, like the question isn't like what's a success, right? Is it a $3,000 advance? Is it a $10,000 advance? Is it a $100,000 advance? Like, yeah, in the end, like advances are only that, because the proof's in the pudding. Like how many books do you sell? But even that is a question of, do you expect your first book to be Fourth Wing? Probably not, right? Like that is like one woman out of like 4 billion. So careful there, Tiger.
That's the great thing about Royal Road, because it flattens the curve a tiny bit to where more authors are able to go past the publishing stage and self-publish, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the only way to gain more experience is to do it yourself, or to get results from the person you're working with or the entity you're working with, like a publisher or like a middleman, right?
So a book is successful if it makes enough money for you to get by, right? Or if you want to earn money, if you want to do nothing but writing, then success is being able to do that. If you want to just have written a book and published it, then that's a success. Like, so yeah. But like the thing you said about the dip, I've been thinking about as well while you were talking a little bit, because I don't know how much I would kind of want to like talk about like myself on this, but I think it helps people relate, because most people kind of they know my woes with my own book, right? So right now I just don't have enough time to write. Like I said before the podcast even started, I have a lot of stuff to do right now. And it is hard. It is very hard to like put everything in. And it's also super hard to keep a rhythm if you have different stuff to do every single morning, and you can't write reliably because, you know, like you're getting a ping from work, or you're getting an email that you need to reply to like yesterday. Yeah. So pushing through that I think is also very hard. And again, it all comes down to, what do you want? Why do you want to do this? And I'm personally looking forward to finishing this next arc, and then we'll see. So.
Yeah, like when you said pings, I was like, oh yeah, that's the biggest reason that's keeping me away from writing or like scripting, I guess. Because, you know, you would start, you're like staring at your Word document or like a Google Doc, and you're like almost ready to go in. And then you get a ping on Discord, and it's like, wait, who is this? Oh, wait, it's kind of important. And you actually need to like engage with this person now, and like help them or like work with them. And then once you're done with that conversation, you're all like, you're not even thinking about your novel anymore. You're like, wait, no, I have more work.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was like a while ago, I was talking with my friends and I said, hey, I'm getting a ping on Discord. So I'm sitting down to write. I'm getting a ping on Discord. I blink and suddenly I'm on my couch eating chips and watching anime. Or like a TV show. So but my apartment is clean, so that's nice. But it all comes down to kind of willpower and just like removing distraction is always easier than resisting distraction. So if I really want to write, I shut down Discord and everything else, all browser tabs and everything the day before. And I literally just have like one laptop that is like connected to a screen where there's nothing going on, but, well, how should I put this?
You're just in the flow.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to go into the flow state.
Yeah. You're just looking at the screen. You're doing nothing but that. And it kind of works.
You know that you're like writing competitively if you're like really seeing the world before you when you're writing it, or like your hands do their own thing as you're writing it. Then you're like in the deepest flow state, and that's a really good feeling, because then you can like write a novel in 2 weeks.
Yes, and it's not even a good one because it jumps all over the place because you're thinking faster than you can write, and you're like, oh no, I need to edit this. Oh no. But yeah, you will have written a novel in 2 weeks.
Yeah, but like that's the best advice that most people give you. Like just write. And don't think about all the specifics.
I'm doing that with plotting, right? So I mean, I've been rambling about this a while now, but I guess to keep you in the loop, I plot since I've discovered that plotting for me works best when it's basically just pantsing without the prose. It works. So instead of filling in all the details, like for example when you're scripting, you're doing the same thing, right? You don't need to describe like the flower pot on the balcony. You can go like, I went outside, full stop, and then you just keep going. Like you skip all the stuff you don't know, like radically, and just keep writing. And then at the end you go through it again and then you expand it. That actually works pretty well if you actually have the time to go back and finish it right then and there. But if you don't, then it's hard to get back into. So because they're like, what was the thinking there? Oh no, I need to start over again. Oh no. So
yeah. I personally think I have a weird way of plotting. Like I think a lot of people in the space may do the same. I just don't know. I tend to have like maladaptive daydreams, if you know what those are. It's like when you're, for example, listening to music and you're like pacing around your room in circles or stuff, like thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
When I'm like plotting, say, for a fantasy story, I would put up like epic music, right?
Yeah.
Like 2 Steps from Hell, whatever. Like, and then I would pace around. And just think about what the story would be like, or what the next chapter would look like. And it's more so in like a movie format, like a comic format in my head. And then I sit down and I write like a quick story beat, right? Like without the prose, real quick. get up again, walk in a circle again until I have like the next story beat. And I mean, from what I've heard, that's like not usually how people plot stuff. If you've watched like Seth Ring's writing podcasts, he is like the epitome of efficiency or something. Like he's like, all right, guys, I have to stop talking now. It's time to write. And he like writes for like a 30-minute sprint, focused like a laser. I can't do that. I have to like stand up.
He's narrating, like he's dictating most of the time now. And for him, I mean, you can totally tell that he does like writes these down, right? He gets better from book to book, totally. But you can totally tell, like in his earlier stuff, he's literally like written them down, checked for grammatical mistakes, and then just like went on. And I think that's reasonable. It works for him. Certainly works for him. I've actually one time I was in his show one time. I go there regularly. Sorry, I should say. But one time I was there, and he was actually procrastinating, and it was fascinating to see, because I did not expect it whatsoever. And I wrote like, "Hey Seth, are you procrastinating right now?" I was like, "Yeah, I am. I really don't want to go back." Like, well, what now? He's like, I don't know.
Damn, that's really rare. I've never seen that happen in this industry.
Yeah, me neither. But I think you have like even the best struggle. I mean, you've been at Dragon Con. You've talked to like the big authors and how they're like, I don't know if my book's any good, and you're sitting there going like, my brother in Christ, I have 800 followers. That's a question for me, not for you. With your like 5-figure followers, like I just don't know if it's any good. He's sitting there sipping his like $15 Coke that he paid with like spare change that he found in his pocket. Like,
yeah, Dragon Con was crazy.
yeah. But it's fine, right? I'm not bashing these people. Like this is a perfectly normal thing to have happen. Self-doubt is normal. People have that. But no one's safe from that, I guess. Because
that and imposter syndrome, I guess, which is like close but not the same, because you're also doubting, but not like comparing, I guess.
I think,
or maybe actually,
I don't know. I think so Shirt told this story on this podcast, and he said he found a way to beat the imposter syndrome. And it's like he released book 7, I think, of Hero Fights, and Will Smith had released his audio, his biography as audio at the same time. So he was number 1, and Shirt was number 2. And Shirt was like, damn, I'm never going to be a good author because I'm always going to be behind. Like, I'm never going to be reach number 1. And then he was like, wait a second. I think if you are battling with Will Smith for top 1 of all Audible charts, you don't get to have imposter syndrome anymore. You just don't get to have to do that. So,
fun story actually like ties in with that. I was marketing this book like a couple of months ago, and it was like doing better than George R. R. Martin stuff. Like Snow Ice and Fire. And I wasn't even like realizing it. I was like, oh damn, like one more George R. R. Martin book to beat. We're still only in top 10. And I'm like hold up, wait, this doesn't make sense. I told my parents and family, and they were like, wait, what?
Yeah. I mean, same thing, right? Right. So like, if I'm looking at all the other agents and how big of deals they're doing, but my goodness, they've been doing this for over 10 years. I've been doing this for like 1.
Yeah,
not even, right? So I think I'm fine. Like I told you, like some of the deals that have been coming my way, like through luck and connections, sure, but I think I'm doing all right. I think I'm doing more than all right. So
you are.
Yes, I am. Unfortunately, yeah. So I don't get to have imposter syndrome anymore, I guess. But I think that's the biggest and coolest thing about that is actually that like I get to go to like my clients and go like, oh, by the way, and they're like, yes, like yeah, this is like the best feeling. Like I'm doing it for that. So
can a team of has-been teen idols save the world? Find out in the new series Boy Bands and Dragons. When Neverboyland is sucked into a magical world, their reunion takes a back seat to staying alive, But if they can get over the past drama that drove them apart, they may find that even pop stars can be heroes. Come and discover your new favorite read, Our Comeback Tour is Slaying Monsters, the first in the Boy Bands and Dragons series by Kim Smuga Otto, dropping on Kindle Unlimited, October 25th.
What's one thing that you learned while writing that you would love to change if you could, or that you're going to do differently now moving onward?
Well, it kind of contradicts what I said earlier, because nowadays I do it, right?
So you would doubt yourself.
No, it's like with the plotting. I used to wing everything, and that causes a lot of problems when you have to write like 400k words of like arcs all bunched together, and you forget what happened in like chapter 5, and you're like in chapter 55, and you have like no outline to draw from. You have like no spreadsheet. Luckily enough, it was the RPG. It was like for those goblins, so we didn't have a system and all the skills and levels and experience points to keep track of. But I also, like, before I was able to write the third book, me and my co-author would be like, okay, let's read the first two again. And so actually this time, like, make a spreadsheet of all the characters and like all the events. And then after it was done, I was like, oh man, we should have done this way earlier. It would have been like, we would have already had the third book written, all the time invested into like plotting all of this out now. But that's like one thing. And I know some authors are really good at like waiting. I'm good at it for like a short amount of time. After like a book or two, it just gets disastrous.
It depends on how complex the story is, right? So, I mean, this is completely no offense. Actually, no, I shouldn't be using any other authors' books for this. But Torchbearer, you can not. I started doing this. I started out doing like, oh yeah, well, or like this happens now. I'm like, well, I guess she just has a torch now, right? So that worked for a while, and then at the end, I was like, this is a huge ass Jenga tower. It doesn't work. I cannot take anything out without like everything collapsing and not even noticing it's going to collapse, right? So that all went in the bin. But with Band, it is so much easier because the system is very easy. You only need to really take care of like 5 skills for each character. And sure, if you have like more characters, but the plot itself is very straightforward. There's no, 4 different story layers connecting. So yeah, definitely agree with you. If some stories work like that and some really don't. And I think the best authors do their plotting at the best pantsers do their plotting at the end of the book, right? You're done with the book, and then you take your outline catalogs, your hero's journeys, slap them on there. Look, I'm missing this in this part. Cool, I'm going to add that, right? Yeah, or this is too much here. Yeah.
It's a thing you do avoid if you're like pantsing, right? Like the paradigms of writing, like the character growth, a hero's journey, for example, right? You avoid them, maybe not entirely, because some of them are always applicable in like certain story beats. But you kind of keep readers on their toes if you're like also not sure of what you're writing. It's bad long term, but in the short term, it can like bring really exciting openers, I think.
Yeah, it's like the hero's journey is probably like a bad example, right? But you always have like rising and falling tension. If it's like in the big or in the small. And for example, again, I can only take my own book because I don't want to like disparage anyone else's. In version 2 of Torchbearer, I had rising tension for way too long. Like way too long. It was like one gigantic crescendo. And I didn't have any sequels like for the main character to kind of like be chill with everything. So that's something I would definitely change now. I probably will because I still don't think it's good enough to publish. But that's my eternal curse.
About the rising tensions, like in our space, it's also more with how the character starts out at the beginning of the story. Like if you like the most classic example, weak to strong, lit RPG, right?
Yeah.
Character starts out maybe super weak, and then the author slowly, gives some extra levels. He kills some mobs, he gets some experience, gets some skills. But I think people in the space are expecting a volatile progression system, right? Like you said, not only rising, also like a setback with the promise of another peak later on in the story, right? And I can't imagine it. I've never really written like little RPG like that. I'm still trying to outline one. I've been thinking about that too, like the rising tensions and stuff, where to like halt it or like take it back for a moment and be like, okay, you've killed 5 bosses, now it's the time to just chill for a couple chapters.
Yeah, like I think it was Debbie, I forgot her name. She wrote a book called it's a writing guide. It's called Take Your Pants Off. Debbie something, and she has this line that where she says it's all triangles all the way down. So you have a rising tension and then you have falling tension in like a really big arc, right? So spoilers ahead for Torchbearer, for example. It is main character wakes up, looks at the desert and goes like, oh no, what's going on here? Like, why am I here? It's a mystery. So tension goes up. Oh, can this be true? I thought this was like different. How does this make sense? Everything becomes even more mysterious, and then everything comes crashing down. Oh no, this is actually not what I thought it was. This is completely different, and it's horrible. Oh no, so we're all going down. So what am I doing about it? And it goes back up, right? And then like nothing's working. Is this working? No, yes, this is working, but not that. Oh, it's working. Okay. And then, oh, okay, I did it. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm safe. And that's also like a falling tension. But in these things, there's small mini triangles. So they go up and go down again. I should say peaks, not triangles. I just always draw them as triangles.
It's also with like the in-between moments between like I guess the dip and like the rise. Yeah. You have to like have a period where you're hyping up the story to your readers in like prose, of course. But you also have to deliver it, right? It's so hard to deliver on the rise again and then stop again where it would make sense because you hyped it up so much. Kind of like with games, right? You're hyping up a game with a trailer. You're like, badass MC, weak to strong, powerful, smart, pragmatic MC. And then he's like done. And the readers are like, wait, he was supposed to be pragmatic. It's like, what's alpha male is like.
Promising stuff is still one of my biggest weaknesses because it's all in my head and I don't want to quote unquote spoil anything, so I don't give anyone like big, oh, this is what my MC could look like. And I've noticed this way more now, where best example is Cradle. Wei Shi Linden is like basically it starts out with him not being able to do anything ever whatsoever. He's like terrible, and he's literally visited by like the absolute apex of like the best thing ever, and she like reshapes reality and like stops time and rewinds everything just because she can. Like the entire universe is like in the palm of her hand, and this is a huge disparity there. And he's not like, oh, I'm going to be just like her, but because he's Wei Shi Linden and is like super humble to a fault, he says, oh wow, I hope I can like live up to her expectations. And I'm going to have to be that strong to prevent this thing from happening anyway. So I'm going to do that now. And I have a path forward. And they give a promise, right? That's cool. But I'm still bad at putting those out there. So we'll see.
Yeah, you're like on the third version, right?
Yeah.
Of Torchbearer?
Fourth now. I mean, like fourth, I'm not writing the fourth, but the next one would be the fourth. I've noticed some things at the start of it. So I'm definitely trying to like make the main character a bit more, even more proactive at the start and also more relatable. So there's no reason why she can't say like, hey, yes, cool, before she knows that this is all like a simulation, or like, quote unquote simulation, but that she's in the future. She can still say like, hey, you know what? I can't go back right now, or I want to go back right now, but my friends can handle it on their own. And I'm going to help you defend your city because she's a nice person, right? And I always thought that, but I never wrote that. So that's something I should probably like put in. Like, yeah, she's a nice person. She will save that city because she can. That's who she is, even if she is a bit like stressed out, right? And then also like the capability. In the very first version of it, she was just like this passenger who like watched things happen, and that's a big weakness of mine. Like my characters often just like kind of watch. But with her, I would very much like it if she would take a more active approach. So that answers your question.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Because like Lord of Goblins starts with your main character being like peak capable, right?
Yeah, he's like at the pinnacle of his career. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And it's in that sense, it's kind of almost like a regressor story.
Yeah, it kind of is. I was actually like thinking about it taking place in the same world, and I was like, oh damn, I should have written it like taking place in the same world, because it's like an isekai where he goes to a separate universe and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But regression is also really popular, so maybe the marketing would have been better if I did it.
I mean, regression is always fun to write if you know what you're doing. And like I said, like regression, but in a future sense, right? So like main character wakes up after like X amount of years. That's also fun. I like that. I like the idea of that. I just need to get better at writing it.
Hey, the learning never stops, right?
Yeah.
As second language learners, like second English speakers,
exactly.
It's always going to be a bit harder.
Yeah. The learning shall continue until writing improves. I on my Discord I made a joke sticker that says like the rewrites shall continue until readership improves, which I think is very funny. Anyway, do you want to talk about one book that you love and why is it awesome?
Sure. I have it actually on my shelf right now. It's the Three-Body Problem series by Liu. Yeah. Why I like it? It's because it also is about like multiple protagonists, and well, my own stories are also about multiple characters, like multiple protagonists. And there's also like a lot of timelines that I think are done well. And I also struggle with like writing multiple POV stories and making sure all the timelines make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the Three-Body Problem just does that really well. Like it's really believable. It's got some really intelligent concepts, and it also has like a slight tie-in with RPG. It's gonna be like weird maybe. If you've read Three-Body Problem, like the first book, there is this like virtual game arc in the story. And I was really surprised by that. It's like you start out the book in the Cultural Revolution, and you're like, wait, am I like reading a history book right now?
Yeah, and then like it's like super gruesome, and like they're like shooting like a 14-year-old kid to death or something. Like, what the fuck is happening?
And it's also like in the book, it takes I think 60 to 90 pages of just Cultural Revolution, and you're looking at the cover, and it's like a sci-fi. There's like a pyramid and stuff. And you're like, wait, it's actually still interesting. Like, I want to read about the Cultural Revolution. And it gets slapped in your face, and it's like modern day. And it's like, hey, shit's happening all around the place. There's aliens, by the way. But yeah, that's one of the books I really like. I have yet to continue this series because of work, relatable, right? Like I've started the second book so many times now, where I would like read almost half of it, and then I would get the inevitable work task or deadline. And I'm like, well, I'll read it tomorrow night, and it just collects dust.
Yeah. I've had that with I think the second book of the Locked Tomb series. It's not Gideon. It's well, you know what I mean. Like it is very hard to read. Like that book is dense. It's like biting into cheese. Like just taking like a big pile of cheese, like biting into it, like it's that dense. Like you have to chew, you have to like think about it, you have to like really understand what the fuck is going on. And I can still highly recommend it because I love those kinds of books, but also at the same time, when I'm tired and I've written all day and like worked all day, I look at this and I go, I just can't. Like my brain is mush. I can't. Also, this reminds me, it's like comparing yourself again, right? This reminds me of how bad my book is, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah. Choosing to use the 3-body problem. That's a good choice. I very much like that too. Why do you think it works? Why do you think you open the book expecting sci-fi, but then you read about the Cultural Revolution and you're like, hey, this is actually pretty cool. Let's go.
Again, I think it's like the characters. You immediately have like an emotional connection, which is also something that is paramount to like a good progression fantasy story, right? Like if there's no connection, then why should you care about the person you're reading about progressing? Right? Yeah. It looks like a lot of like self-insert stuff with progression fantasy. It helps with that.
Yeah,
but it's like one of the basic rules, I guess.
Still say, believe, care, invest. BCI. Wonderful concept by Matt Bird. You should go and read his book. It's called The Secrets of Story / The Secrets of Character. Really, really good book series. You should read both. Go check out his podcast. He has his own podcast and also his own webpage. I'm still hoping to get him on, but we'll see. Okay, last but not least, shoutouts. Who do you want to shout out besides Moonquill?
I have a list ready because I would forget about everyone.
Send me the list.
I'll just briefly go over it. So of course, Hadi / Darkster, my co-author for Goblins, and then Moonicle, real quick. Robin Patterson, the script writer for the comic, which has learned me a lot about script writing, and that's also one of the reasons I'm able to script write myself for Legendary Retirement. Then we've got Light Comic Studio, art for Lord of Goblins Webtoon. It's also being used by Sean Wilson's Ultimate Level 1 comic that's in production. And it's also going to be used for Hunter Mythos. I think it's Overpowered Wizard, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, great studio.
Cool.
And then KB Comics, another studio. They're doing the art for Legendary Retirement. And then we have Valron, which I had the pleasure of meeting at Dragon Con. We go way back. Just wanted to shout out his Magnus series because it's like the first story I think I read on Railroad. I still need to like finish it. But I have the book here, so I have no excuse. Actually, I should be reading Magnus, and also his Ashborn series.
Yes, Ashborn Mortal.
Yeah. And then I guess you've got Yorth. He's writing Apocalypse Rebirth. It has like a different name on Railroad. I think it's like Reborn as a Monster Apocalypse. I've known him for as long as I think I've known Valron. And I'm also in charge of marketing his book. So it's just like a part of marketing.
Nice.
And then MG Driver, Alter of Black Market.
He was great.
Guy. Yeah, he was
great on the podcast.
I've listened to the podcast with him on too. Yes, he's great. And I guess, you've heard about Hunter Mythos and Sean Wilson, so I don't know who's left.
Well, it's fine. Less people you have to put on the list because you can send me the list that I can just post it underneath the post. People might like that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, with that being said, I think we're reaching the end of this podcast episode. That didn't hurt. That was nice. You have any last words?
Guys, go and write. Stop procrastinating on YouTube. Go and open your Google Doc and start writing.
or go read Lord of Goblin. The Lord of Goblins. My goodness.
Yeah, if you want to procrastinate, you have options. You know?
Yes. Go read that. All right, cool. Well, with that being said, we're going to be recording some more for a Patreon episode. But yeah, I'm going to put that behind a paywall because I'm a heartless bastard. We're probably going to talk about, let me just check this here, writing multiple POVs. So if you don't want to have success on Royal Road, let me know and subscribe to my Patreon. No, okay. With that being said, thank you everyone for listening and or watching, and I'll see you next time. And if you're on Patreon, the show goes on.